Now I just talked about post selection. So we have some naturally occurring posts that would be fairly straight, and we have posts that are core posts that are true. We have red pine versus yellow pine versus native. Native here would be like your cedars or your locusts. And we have different preservatives that we apply to posts, this is all pretty common. I think most of us would know this. And then we have the installation process itself. We can dig them, we can set them in concrete, or we can pound them in. If we do pound post in, one of the major things is you can't smash the top of the post. There's a difference between pounding a post with a driver and taking a beating on top of the post and actually smashing the top of the post. If we smash the top of the post, what we're going to do is we're going to allow moisture in. You got to remember that creosote and your CCA treatments, whatever you want to call them, the creosote is waterproofing itself. It will keep water out of the fiber. But if you smash those fibers, what happens is moisture gets in between the fibers, freezes, separates the fibers even more. So then we get increased fence checking or post checking, and that post checking, which is going to create a crevice in the post, increased moisture content in the post, increased moisture content causes fungus. Fungus is the death of a post. So that's why we don't want to do that. Creosote's still number one. Everybody will tell you that creosote post will still outlast any other treatment. They're harder to get. The thing about some of the copper sulfates is you can still get bug deterioration. Creosote, you get very little bees. You get you don't have animals chew on creosote like you do on some of the copper sulfates. We often hear that equine are extremely hard on some of the copper sulfate posts, and because they like them, they'll stand around and actually chew on them. Red pine versus yellow pine. I guess the biggest thing on the red pine versus yellow pine is if you look at a red pine tree, red pine trees, their limbs grow in circles. What that converts to in a post is, in a post situation, that means you get knots in a circle. If you get knots in a circle on a post, it makes your post weak, because those knots will dry out and bust out. Cedar has become a really popular option as we go to organic farming. They're getting harder to get, good cedar is. And then locust, we've all heard about the blight. Low country locust does not last like the old locust used to last. So a little bit different animal there as compared to what your grandfather might have been used to. Back then, locust posts would last 80, 90 years. We're hearing stories of posts that last 10, 15 years max now. So the livelihood in them, and that varies greatly. The extent of the blight area, species of locust varies that also. These are an example of red pine. And this is something to look for when you go to a post yard. Red pine also has a big core. These are also extremely true posts. Once you cut that cambium layer off the outside of that, and once you start cutting those rings, those growth rings, if that post is crooked when you start, every time you true that post, you're cutting more cambium layers to make it look uniform or true. The more cambium layers you cut in a post, the weaker it gets. It's no different than if you take a stack of papers that thick and you cut a hole down in them, they're easier to bend. The same thing happens to a post. True post versus natural post is they put them in there and it's just like a big pencil sharpener. It's going to take them off. You can get true posts that are core posts, and core posts will look a lot like these with big centers in them, which is your hardwood. Hardwood never treats. I don't care what you put it in. And the post guys will tell you that. So these are actually red pine because they're 6-inch posts, but they've got a 4 to 4.5 center in them. It's not treatable. What happens is if you try to drive these in August, these will actually slab off. So what we call slabbing is It'll start at the edge of the dartwood, and then it'll work to the outside cambium layer, which creates basically like it's a wedge. So again, it just ruins your post because you're down the hardwood, it's not treated, and it's exposed to the elements, and then that post is just going to go ahead and rot off. So watch for your things to watch for when you buy posts is watch for your center diameter of your core. Also watch for the growth rings. Growth rings that vary are not engineered wood, and those are extremely hard to find now. Most of the posts come from big plots of land in the south, and all of it's engineered pine. So no matter what the weather is this year, that tree is designed or genetically engineered to grow X number of feet and X diameter every year. That post is not as good as a tree that says, wait a minute, the elements aren't great for me this year, so I'm going to grow, instead of growing a foot, I'm going to grow an inch, so to speak. So the very growth rings means you're actually getting a better post, because that post is taking out of the environment what it needs and it's producing a set product. Whereas a genetically engineered tree is just going to grow, 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 grow. So it's getting less quality in its actual wood fiber. This just kind of shows the ring in the center. You can also see another common problem with the red pine in the sap growth that's in the post that's got the red on the end of it. This kind of runs through the brace design. This brace design is a little bit out spec. We've started moving the rails down, and the reason we move the rails down is to change the angle in the brace wire. So 10 foot on the rails, and that also helps decrease the angle in the brace wire. If you cannot find 10-foot posts, a lot of guys want to know if they can use pipe. Pipe's kind of readily available here in West Virginia. The problem with pipe is going to rust. And that rust is going to fall on that brace wire. When it falls on the brace wire is going to rust, and then it's going to break. Rust is very cancerous. So be careful of where you place steel that's not galvanized in your fence structure. You've also got to remember that this is the basis of your fence now. We're not hard nailing anywhere else in the fence structure. So the only thing that keeps tension on your fence is this structure at each end of your fence. And that's why it has to be built correct. So spend your money on the two ends. If you want to save money in your operation, the place to do it is down that fence row, because you can replace those posts at any given time in the fence's life. So if you put a 4-inch post and somebody hits it with a brush hog and breaks it off because he tapped it too hard, it's no big deal. You can go put it back in. You mess these two posts up here, it's a major overhaul. You might as well build a new fence. Here's a structure. Just talked about my able to find 10-foot posts. So these guys had some galvanized pipe. You got to really watch the diameter of your pipe. Use a big enough pipe. This is in Kentucky, and I actually had some issues. We bowed some pipe. So when we hung that wire, that is nylon, 200 pounds a piece, 1,800 pounds of pressure, constantly pulling on that structure, and it bowed a pipe. Here's another good example. This is actually in Weston. A major cattle producer built a lot of fence in a year's time, has fence built for him, and this was built by somebody, not by the farmer himself. But the problem with this structure, there's two problems with this structure. One, if you look at the top of the post in this structure, which post is the tallest? Middle. Pretty obvious. So the other problem is look at the rusty pipe. That's brand new fence. This was less than a year old. So when I zoom in, what I see is they drilled a hole at the bottom of the post and run their brace wire through the post. And when they run that brace wire through the post, they actually pick the post up. So the other obvious reason now I zoomed in is they didn't stop the wire. Why build an H-brace if you're not stopping wire? An H-brace is for the end of a fence. That's the only place that has any structural integrity is at the end of your structure. They didn't do it. So if you're paying for a fence to be built by somebody, this costs you money with zero effect on the livelihood of your fence or of your project. So you're paying for fluff, to put it simple. So we'll switch just a little bit. We'll go into some electric fencing. And one of the major concerns in electric fencing is grounding. I started getting calls in July, and they'll run all the way through fall. Will you come look at my fence and help me out? And I've traveled from one end of the state to the other, plus some others, and the number one issue is grounding. Because when I went to see a gentleman just outside of Clarksburg one time, he was a veterinarian, great guy, had some nice cattle, nice black cattle, and I got some cattle and like to show cattle, so I'm walking around, we're looking at some cows, and we're kind of putting the fence on the back burner. This guy starts talking to me, he says, well, I don't have no power here, how come I have no power? And I'm like, well, I don't know. How big's your Energizer? He tells me how big his Energizer is. Well, that shouldn't be the problem. And he just recently upgraded his Energizer because he's like, I don't have enough power. I don't have enough power. And I said, well, where's your ground rods at? They're right next to a building underneath of an eave. So, well, that's good. And he goes, so he takes me up there and we drive up there and pick up and look at these ground rods. He goes, see how high you're up there? And I said, yeah. That's why I put those there. And I said, that's why you put them there? He goes, yeah, I come up here once a week and I water those ground rods to make sure they're working. I said, oh, that's good. That's a great idea. So you're watering where the cows are standing, right? He just looked at me like, you're really being a smart aleck. And I said, well, think about this. The ground rod isn't the total issue because every electric fence is like you and I speaking to each other. If I take this mic off and you stand right here, you and I can have a great conversation. We can communicate really well. You go out, open the doors, and go out and stand on the other side of the hallway. I don't raise my voice. And even if I do, we're still going to have trouble communicating. Well, that's what happens in electric fence structures. Because of grounding. That cow has to be close enough to a ground source to make it viable for those electrons to flow through that hot wire, through that cow, back to that ground source so it can get back to the Energizer. If it can't get back to the Energizer, it will not be able to electric shock that cow. It's plain and simple. Electrons have to travel in a circle to have an effect or to create a shock to a cow or to any livestock. So the number one thing I always cover is grounding. If you want to increase the power on your fence, you've got an Energizer that's putting out 3,000 volts, which by the way is the minimum to control cattle. If you got sheep and goats, that needs to go up to about 5,000. You got horses, you can go down to 2,000. So it depends on your species. But here in West Virginia, we have rocky soils, and sometimes the guys say, well, I can't get my ground rod in. I'm like, put 6-foot ground rods in. And they're like, well, we got solid rock 2 foot down, so how am I going to do that? Well, then you need to put your ground rod in at an angle, and you need to put it in areas that is conducive to electron flow. Those areas would be natural dips that's going to, when it rains really hard, that's where you're going to see that water flow to. So you're going to go underneath that fence row and you're going to put a ground rod right there. It's going to be that swamp. It's going to be that stream. It's going to be that area below that pond that stays wet. It's going to be, your cows will home out, your livestock will home out for you. It's going to be the areas that stay the muddiest, the longest. Those are the areas that you put your ground rods, because that is where the electrons are going to be picked up the best. And your ground rod needs to be there. It's also going to be the area you get your ground rod in the farthest, tends to be. So, grounding is everything. You've got to remember what insulation is. Insulation is distance plus resistance equals insulation. So, let's call this 1/4 inch. So, I've got an energizer that can shoot a spark 1/4 inch. So, if I use a tube insulator and I run a wire through the center of it, and that 1/4 inch now goes to this. Is that insulation? Is the question. So, because I've already told you it's distance plus resistance. So the distance, I've already shrunk it. So now how much resistance do I have? Resistance is created by a non-conducive electron flow material, plastic. So we use plastic to create insulation. The trouble with a tube insulator, and the reason I also get calls, is my gate's hot. I touched my gate the other day in the rain and I got shocked. It took me to my knees. Why? I looked up and down my post. There's no wire touching. There's nothing bare. My number one response is, you have wraparound insulators at your post. And they're like, well, yeah, but they're insulated. Yeah, but you just took that distance clear back to here. Now, the question is how much resistance you got, because I already told you I can shoot that spark 1/4 inch. So when I cut that distance back, resistance becomes even a bigger factor. And what do you see in tube insulators? The thickness of the resistant material is very thin. And that's why we get hot gates. Tubes are famous for putting hot gates, or what we call wraparound insulators. The other thing about the resistance in your fence, we're actually creating, if you use tubes all the way to your fence, we're actually creating resistors in your fence. Because if you take an EVM or digital voltmeter and you put on any staple down the fence row, you'll notice that it reads. And that's because there's just that little bit of bleed through. It might only be 100 volts, because you got to remember, if your DVM says 5.0, that's 5,000. So 5.1 is 5,100 volts. So as we get down to reading our DVM, when we put it on that fence steeple, it's not uncommon to see 200 and 300 on those. So every fence steeple, all the way through the fence, you're creating a lot of resistance. And that's why your energizer goes from that magic 5,000 number down to that 1,500 number too. So remember the materials you're putting in your fence. This is the proper method for hanging an energizer and ground rods. Take nothing in effect that there's only 3 ground rods in this picture. There is no magic number of ground rods. 3 is not the number. 3 is the starting point. You should test your grounds. You can find out how to test your grounds online through installation brochures. The easy way to test your, what they're basically going to tell you is you're going to load your fence. So you're going to lay steel, like steel T-posts, against your positive wires. And you're going to get your fence down to somewhere around 1,000 volts or 0 if you can. And then you're going to come back to this ground rod and you're going to test it. You're going to put your DVM on this last ground rod. And what it should read is below 300 volts. 0 is ideal. So in other words, those ground rods can short that fence that tight. And that's how you test your ground rods. So like I said, there's a process that you can go online and Google or whatever. Gallagher puts it in their brochures to test those. But the one thing that, as I do talks for Gallagher that I've talked to their reps about several times is when you look at their installation chart, it shows the ground rods underneath the fence. Because they're like, well, that's a safe place to put them. But the ground wire comes off of the negative in the fence and goes to the negative in the Energizer. What happens when lightning hits that fence? It goes straight to that box and blows the box off the wall. If you route your grounds this way, you'll find out that Energizer doesn't get blown off the wall because your electricity, those stray voltages coming in, gets shorted out through the ground rods as it travels through the ground rods. This is an ideal fence, 5-strand fence. You can control more with 5 strands of smooth wire if you do it this way than you'll ever control with 8 and 9 strands. The reason being is this fence structure prevents cattle. You got to remember, you're building a mental fence. So why put up 9 strands? That's a physical structure. That's not a mental structure. That's a physical structure. 5 strands of fence, move the bottom wire off the ground. And in cattle situations, that can be 14 inches off the ground. The benefit of putting that 14 inches off the ground is they will clean the structure. You get less weed growth. Then you just spot spray, which is better for your farm because you don't create fence line erosion. In West Virginia, a lot of fences run up and down the hills. If you spray that fence, we've actually seen it happen several times. If you spray a fence line and run straight down over a mountain or a hill, there'll be a ditch here in 2 years because that water will find the least resistant path, and it's going to be where there's no vegetation. And then you have a ditch, and then you have an issue because then it's washing your post out of the ground. So you only have to spot spray the woody materials, which in West Virginia, you guys are famous for your multifloor rows. So you only have to spray your multifloor rows in your fence line. Your livestock will keep your fence clean. But the other benefit is when you go to 14 inches, you're now up out of the real sappy undergrowth of grass. So you're going to get less shortage. The number one reason producers tell me they don't electrify that bottom line is because it'll short my fence out. Well, there's something else wrong with the design, not with the fact that shorting your fence out. You either don't have a big enough Energizer, or you don't have a proper ground system, or your line's too close to the ground, you're not maintaining your fence structure. There's another cause. There's no reason to not make that a positive line. When you make that a positive line, the other thing it does not encourage your livestock to put pressure on your fence. If that's a negative line, if you make the bottom 3 lines negative, you go out there, I'll guarantee those cows are shoving those bottom 3 lines. And that's why we get staples popping off the post. And that puts more wear and tear on your total fence structure when we're trying to build a mental structure anyways. So we want that cow to look at that fence and say, ooh, I don't want to touch it. So we went ground, or we went positive, and then the negative, positive, negative, positive. Why do we do that? Because every time that animal touches that post, it's equivalent to walking up there and grabbing the 2 terminals on the Energizer. The reason there's 3 terminals on the Energizer, by the way, there's always on New Zealand Energizers, there's always a ground, and you got a high and a low. So, a little bit of explanation there, I guess. And when you go from your Energizer to your fence, if you cannot run high tensile wire, you need to run a double insulated product that's designed for electric fence. Do not use household cable. Household cable is not designed for over 500 volts. When you're running an Energizer, we're running 5,000 volts. I got a friend that runs a place down in just outside of Point Pleasant, and you touch their barn, their whole barn shocks you. And I'm like, you know how dangerous that is, right? And they just laugh about it. They're like, well, we can't get it off. So that's going to be a trip to get power off their barn because it's shocking them. Here's what a jewel is. A jewel is important because when you go to any store to buy an Energizer, this is a term you always see. It's a big, long, complicated equation. Basically, if you want to get it down to layman's terms, it's pretty simple. A joule is somewhere between 1 mile and 3 miles on a fence energizer, depending on how you're building your structure. If you're using all high tensile product, that number goes up to about 3. If you're using a lot of poly braids, wire, or polywire, poly tape, stuff that has more resistance in it, then you're going to go back to the 1-to-1. So a joule is basically how much energy we can put down a fence line. You also need to know when you're buying energizers if it's stored joule or output joule. Most energizers on the US market are stored joule. When you buy a tractor and you buy a 95 horsepower tractor, that's not how many horsepower is on the ground over at the PTO. An energizer is the same way. And in an energizer, you can take about a quarter out. So you just divide by 4 and that's your output joules. That makes a difference. You need to buy what you're putting on your fence. It doesn't do you any good to buy a tractor that says it's 95 engine horsepower and you need 95 horsepower on the ground to pull a plow or pull a piece of equipment because you're not getting the conversion. Offsets and lead out power. Offsets are a great way to get power out your fence line. The nice thing about offsets is one of the things that we're doing in producer type situations now is we build a really good physical structure because we want to protect our investment. And we build that around the perimeters of our farms. So once we get the perimeter fence done, why go out and put a 13-line high tensile woven wire fence across my farm? I really don't care if my calf goes from field A to field B. I really don't care if that lamb goes from field A to field B. I care if the mother goes from field A to field B because she's going to do damage. But if I can get that youngin to go underneath the fence, it's actually a benefit because I just created a creep feeder. So one of the things we want to do is we want to figure out how to maintain our livestock on our farms to protect our investment and to protect us from liability. But then we want to figure out how to cross-divide our pasture fields in the most economical way we can. The way we do that is with offsets. The offset on the far side for me is a very popular offset that we see used a lot, and we encourage people to put on their fences. The nice thing about that offset is you can hit that with a tractor, fold it completely back against that woven wire fabric, and it'll pop right back out. So when you hire that young man who wants to be an agricultural engineer on your farm to come out and run your tractor, and he's sitting in that cab listening to music thinking, boy, this is sure a lot nicer than me running that weed eater here in a little bit. So he's trying to get really, really close. When he hits that, it doesn't do any damage. You're still good to go. If you're running stockers and you commingle cattle in your paddocks, again, when those stockers meet and greet each other for that first time, no damage. It's going to pop right back out. It's not going to short your fence out. You can put in something, and this, I apologize for how blurry this is. It's not that blurry on my computer, but these are pigtails, and they're solid. They've got a metal rod inside of them, and they're coated with a product on the end to insulate them. And they're nice for some situations like with these horses, but when you put them in a livestock situation, and you move them down that magic mark, which is about 32 inches on that fence structure, we find out that those cattle fighting or that teenager, that agriculture engineer on that tractor, when he hits them, permanent short until somebody goes and finds it and fixes it. So a little bit of a disadvantage, and it creates a maintenance issue. You're going to have to walk your fence a little bit more. So, something just happened. No. That was about it anyways.
You have 1 minute.
Yeah, that's about it. So I guess in wrapping up, if you guys have questions, we'd be glad to entertain those. That's kind of my spiel for electric fencing. I encourage you to spend more time planning in your fencing structures and in your fencing programs than kind of feeling like you need to get out there and get it over with. Because that's what we see, and then we see guys building fences 4 and 5 years after they build them. The new fabric, all these new products are totally different. So take that into effect that it's not the same beast that your parents dealt with or your granddad dealt with. It's totally different now. So I thank you for coming and listening to me today, and have a great day.